Hey guys, this is Wraith, author of the gay vampire romance Everdark that you are about to listen to, performed by a multi-actor cast. The podcast would not be possible without her Grace Reed studio, which provides the excellent voice talent, and of course, the support of the Wraith Rain members who are subscribers to my site, wraithrain.com, which you will learn about down below and in the podcast. I hope you enjoy how the talented actors bring these vampires and their world of darkness, mystery, and eternal love to life. Now let's get down to it.
Last time on Everdark, Julian was rescued from the Order by Balthazar and Christian. Now that he's assured of his best friend's safety, Julian's own situation looms much larger. Now we turn to Balthazar, as he adjusts to not only having a new fledgling, but Julian in his house. Oh, and Sophia, who is very happy to move right in. Everdark, Episode 13, The Boss. Lord Balthazar Ravenscroft stared at the delivery trucks in the driveway of his mansion. Sophia Strange was directing several big, burly men who came with the truck.
Take that bed and this dresser and that bookcase and this desk to the Rose Suite,
She chirruped at the big, burly man happily. The Rose Suite was the largest guest bedroom with French doors that led out into the rose garden in back, hence its name. It was an exquisite set of chambers. Really, it was the best suite in the house that hadn't already been claimed. And it was now Sophia Strange's bedroom. Balthazar walked over to her, hands slid into the pockets of his tailored slacks and raised an eyebrow. So, seeing the future includes knowing other people's credit card numbers too? Handy gift, that.
COD, cash on delivery.
She gave him a large smile so bright that he felt it should illuminate the front walk. Grasping the lapels of his coat, she added,
And I love all of what you got for me. You're so thoughtful.
I am, he agreed with a barely suppressed quirk of his lips. There was something rather infectious about her smiles. He found that he wasn't really even annoyed with her presumptuousness. What really was the cost of a set of furniture compared to that megawatt smile? His eyes caught on yet another piece being wheeled into the house. Or 2 sets of furniture, he amended. She had the charm of the permanent guest down pat, and maybe that made him feel for her. He knew what it was like to belong nowhere and have to ingratiate yourself constantly.
I'm so glad to have finally found a home,
She told him. Another bright-as-the-sun smile beamed upon him. I cannot wait to hear about my greatness, he said, bringing up her promise from before. He had heard about a seer's abilities, but he didn't know if he really believed them. Maybe they would get something right occasionally, but existence was messy. How could one really see what was going to happen for certain? So though he said he was looking forward to seeing her gift in action, he really didn't believe in it. Rather like Damon. But she had kept Julian safe until he had arrived, and for that, he could offer her a space to stay. All exiles need to stick together. She might still be allowed in Everdark, but she's lost her true home there. Her silver eyes suddenly sparkled in the moonlight, and her grip tightened on the lapels on his jacket. Her voice wasn't that of the high, breathy girl child she appeared to be. Instead, it was low but charged with excitement.
It starts tonight, when you meet your king, and he meets you.
A mixture of alarm and disdain ran through Balthazar. It was an odd mix, so he examined it closely. Alarm because if there was the faintest chance that Julian's missing master really was King Damon, then he would have an incredibly powerful immortal on his doorstep within less than 12 hours. The disdain came from his belief that even if this vampire who had turned Julian really was King Damon, all that likely really meant was that he was very old. Age increased a vampire's power. The older a vampire was, the more powerful the vampire was. Damon couldn't be their creator. Damon wasn't the first among equals. He certainly wouldn't be a religious figure. Balthazar had known too many vampires who got respect simply because they'd lived a long time, often at the expense of everyone around them. So he did not worship this absent king, and if Damon really showed up, he'd have to earn Balthazar's respect. Damon was already starting in the basement of Balthazar's esteem because he'd abandoned Julian. He said it was so Julian could save Christian, but no master simply lets his fledgling go. I couldn't let Christian just leave me, though he wants to. Sophia giggled, girlish and almost sweet, which drew him out of his grim thoughts. She informed him,
You'll butt heads at first, but then you'll see.
I'll see what? Her expression grew soft, tender as if she already knew him to his bones and understood exactly every hurt he'd ever experienced. It was an unnerving look.
That he is exactly what you've been looking for.
Balthazar was stunned into silence for a moment. Then he was about to tell her that he needed nothing. He wasn't looking for anything either. This King Damon wasn't going to be anything to him but a big pain in the arse, an unwelcome guest at best. But before he could say a word, she gave him another kiss on the cheek and skipped off after the movers, undoubtedly to direct them as to where they should put her new things. He stared after her with a rather bemused expression on his face, then shook his head. Arceus stepped up to his side. She's going to spend us out of house and home if this keeps up, Balthazar remarked, as yet another expensive piece of furniture meandered past him.
Nonsense,
Arceus chided him.
We have more than enough money.
The confessor became thoughtful.
Do you remember when we were first exiled and had nothing?
Balthazar did remember. Their master, Roan Tithe, had been wealthy even for a vampire. With a household of over 100 Iros, it was easy to see why. The youngest and least skilled at using mind control could encourage humans to simply give them everything in their bank accounts. The most skilled could fleece the wealthy and take all they had, plus more. Yet after Balthazar slew Roan, he and his blood brothers and sisters had not received a penny from the estate, even though it was money that they had all earned under threat of being kicked out by their own master. Balthazar's actions to save himself and all the others from Roan's sadistic rule had stripped them of all rights and funds. They'd literally been penniless when they were cast out into Earth from Everdark. After they had been exiled, and he had been shockingly appointed their leader, Balthazar had taken it upon himself to make sure that the people had a safe place to stay and blood to sustain them. He'd conned a particularly loathsome banker who had gotten rich by fleecing the poor into giving over this house and all of his bank accounts. Balthazar had also tirelessly lured humans into their stable so the members of House Ravenscroft wouldn't have to hunt every night and risk exposure. Such exposure would have meant death for them and the humans who discovered their existence. What he'd told Christian about the difficulties of vampire existence when one was on one's own was a version of what he'd been through when they were first exiled. But he'd survived. His house had thrived. Though they had lost access to Everdark and the fellowship of other vampires, Balthazar had made a place for them in this new world. Not only would they not go hungry or be out on the streets, he'd made his house powerful. Non-exiled vampires came to him now for help. They might not reveal to others that they'd sought out his assistance, but he was known as a vampire that could get things done. And now they were blessed, or burdened, he really wasn't sure which, with their very own seer. I suppose we are rich enough to afford our own seer, Balthazar grunted finally as the last piece of furniture disappeared into the house.
I'm surprised you're out here grumbling about money being spent. Why are you not with Christian and Julian?
Arceus asked. Balthazar schooled his expression into one of mildness, but he was sure that his best friend knew he wasn't happy. Julian is lying down in my bedroom. Christian is with him. I asked Maddie to look Julian over. Maddie was the healer he'd sent for the night before to examine Elena. He'd asked her to see to Julian as well on his way out of his bedroom.
The boy just needs to feed.
Arceus shrugged his large shoulders.
So does Christian. Why are you not in the bedroom, saying to them both?
Balthazar winced. This was humiliating to admit, but he thought he might be able to make it sound less so if he was casual about it. Christian believed that Julian would feel better if it was just the two of them, so I took my leave. Arceus stared at him a moment before breaking into long, low chuckles.
Your fledgling kicked you out of your own chambers, didn't he?
Balthazar narrowed his eyes at the confessor. Keep laughing, and I may commandeer your chambers for my own. They are the second best, after all. Arceus continued to chuckle, holding his stomach as he tried to quell them unsuccessfully.
Oh, Balthazar, you big softy.
I am not soft.
Oh, you are. He tells you to jump and you ask how high.
Arceus's laughter was echoing now. You think this is funny, but it isn't. I don't understand how things have gone sideways on me like this. Balthazar couldn't hide his bewilderment then, as he thought about how Christian just had to look at him, and he was backing off. I really don't understand it. Christian not only is not hopelessly in love with me, I don't even think he likes me very much. He treats me as if he is in charge, and I act like it too. Arceus stopped laughing, though a few chuckles escaped while he looked fondly at Balthazar.
You really have no idea, do you?
I don't. I have no idea why my fledgling is in charge. Balthazar crossed his arms over his chest. Then, with a faint note of worry entering his voice, he asked, Is something wrong with me? Arceus clasped his shoulder with one of those bear-sized hands.
Of course not. Everything is completely fine. Balthazar, the reason Christian isn't enthralled to you is because you don't wish him to be.
I don't wish him to be? One of Balthazar's eyebrows crawled up his forehead. He knew that he'd been concerned that Christian would be enslaved to his will, but he hadn't wanted Christian to be uninterested in him. He wanted a little bit of the master fledgling magic.
No, you want him to have his own mind and will. You've granted him this great gift to choose you.
Arceus explained patiently.
It amazes me how a vampire as young as you has such control.
Control? Not exactly. If what you say is really what's happening, I didn't consciously do it. Balthazar let out a sigh. I should be grateful that he's strong and healthy. But is it too much to ask that he like me? Even a little. Arceus squeezed and released his shoulder.
He will. He just needs to get to know you. Give him time.
Balthazar nodded grimly after a moment. Vampires were immortal. All they had was time. Yes, I suppose you're right.
But you mustn't let him overrule you when you have his best interests at heart. Like feeding him. Bring Julian a few bags of blood, not ideal, I know, for him to drink, and then feed your fledgling your own blood.
Arceus advised.
This is what is best.
Balthazar squeezed the top of his nose. Yes, you're right, as always.
Of course.
Arceus looked all too pleased with himself, though really it was just the placid expression he often wore. Perhaps it was being a confessor that made him zen in the most un-zen-like times. Perhaps I should feed Julian too, Balthazar said with sudden inspiration. The thought of the young fledgling drinking cold bags of blood while he and Christian communed with one another didn't seem right. And if he was honest with himself, he feared that Christian would insist on having bagged blood too. If it was good enough for Julian, then it would be good enough for him. That placid expression slid away, replaced with alarm.
Balthazar, no. He's not your fledgling.
He's no one's fledgling from what I can see, Balthazar pointed out. Do you see this daemon anywhere? He stretched his arms to the side, towards the bubbling fountain and the moon-silvered rose bushes. He's not here, and if he's not here when Julian is at his most vulnerable, he doesn't deserve a fledgling.
You heard what Julian said. Daemon cannot leave Everdark yet. He sent Julian on ahead to save Christian.
Arceus reminded him. The big vampire curled one of those large hands around the ruby and gold cross he wore. Doesn't that sound like an excuse to you? I mean, why can't he?
Because he's not been fed in the millennia? Because he's just woken? We know little of what the immortals need.
Arceus pointed out quite rationally. but Balthazar found himself still scoffing at this weakness. If he was anyone else other than your precious King Damon, would you really be arguing on his behalf, making excuses for him? Balthazar shook his head. I think not. Julian and Christian should have been turned together by the same master and in the same house. Arceus's brow beetled.
That may have been what was ideal, but we must deal with what is. They are not both turned by you, Balthazar. Come to terms with that.
Why should I? Julian is right here. He pointed towards the mansion. He is in my bedroom being comforted by his best friend, who happens to also be my fledgling. Why shouldn't he become a part of my house? Arceus stared at him without blinking, as if he could not quite believe his ears. But his best friend was more a traditionalist rather than a rebel.
Because he has a master already that is not of the Pyros bloodline.
What does that even matter? Why shouldn't we have mixed houses? You seemed eager enough to take in Sophia. Why not Julian? Balthazar challenged.
Because Sophia has nowhere else to go. Her mistress is dead and gone, while Julian's is...
Missing in action, at best. Balthazar filled in the end of that sentence.
Would you appreciate another master feeding Christian?
Arceus asked him, changing tack, clearly realizing he would not convince Balthazar of his other position. Of course not. But if I abandoned him, then I would have earned that happening. His hands were clenched into fists at his sides. That answer caused Arceus to look more alarmed. His silver eyes widened and his gaze flickered frantically between Balthazar and the house.
You cannot. He is the fledgling of the king.
Have you bought any Wraithrain merch? If so, I would love to see it. Snap a picture, post it on whatever platform you want, and make sure to tag me so that I know you've posted something. I don't post a lot on social media because, I have to write. But I look at all my feeds and I'd love to see what you got. Links to my social accounts are in the notes.
Arceus, Balthazar began, his exhausted tone indicating just how little he believed that. Arceus grabbed his biceps and stared into Balthazar's eyes.
You must not feed him, Balthazar. Promise me. Promise me.
The same rebellious nature that had worked so well against Roan Tithe reared up inside of Balthazar like an angry snake. He knew that Arceus was giving him good advice. He even knew he should take it. But this little voice inside of him whispered, "He's not the boss of me. No one is. Not anymore." He removed Arceus's hands from him, not violently. His best friend wasn't trying to truly restrain him, but firmly. I will do what I think is best. I am the head of this house, am I not? He knew that he didn't need to say that either. Arceus had been the first to take his side. The confessor had gone into exile with him, even though he hadn't needed to. But Balthazar was all out of sorts. Damon had been sleeping when all the other immortals had treated their fledglings like cannon fodder. Now, he'd made his own fledgling only to send him out alone in the world? These things made him unfit to lead, let alone to claim Julian in Balthazar's mind. I should have been the one to turn them both. This Damon stole that from me, but maybe not. Maybe I can get Julian back into the fold where he belongs.
Balthazar, you know I support you, but this is foolish.
Arceus sounded grief-stricken. No, what's foolish is allowing a fledgling out into the world on his own. What's foolish is trying to convince me I need to serve an immortal that slept while the rest of us have suffered. That was the last thing that Balthazar said before he turned on his heel and headed into the house. Though he fully intended to feed Julian from himself, he went and got several bags of blood. There was a guest house in the back of the property. It was large enough to hold 24 people. It was where their favored acolytes stayed. These acolytes were the ones that eagerly offered their blood to their vampire masters in the hopes that they might be turned at some point. There was also extreme pleasure to be had through the blood exchange too, which was reason enough to be a willing participant. Better than any drug, better than food, or sex, or anything, one of the humans had told him. The guest house was overflowing with those things too. The best food and drink, certain drugs that did not taint the blood or harm the acolyte, and endless orgies. In addition to providing fresh feedings for the vampires in House Ravenscroft, excess blood was bagged for convenience and emergencies. That was what he had taken for Julian. He raced down the stairs to his bedroom. His heart was slamming against the inside of his chest. His palms were actually sweating. He lingered outside his half-shut bedroom door as he tried to calm himself before going inside. He was as giddy as a schoolboy. He needed to be controlled. Maddie was speaking to the two boys. Her Scottish brogue was pleasant and low.
You just need to eat, Julian,
she advised.
The turning is hard on the body and the spirit. Being away from your master is making it quite a bit worse.
Yes, it is. But we'll fix that.
I was able to hear him earlier. Damon, I mean,
Julian said, his voice tinted with worry.
In my head, like telepathy, but I can't now.
There was a pause as Maddie took this in. Balthazar was shocked too. Full telepathy? That was rare, especially between master and newly born fledgling. Finally, the healer responded.
That's a rare gift. I'm guessing that the silence now is again to do with you being low on energy. You need blood.
Balthazar took that moment to enter his bedroom. And he shall have it. Both of them shall. He held the blood packs in front of him, as if they were exhibits of his intention not to feed Julian himself. He grimaced as he realized that he was hiding what he wished to do from Maddie. He must believe that the healer too would think feeding Julian was wrong. I just don't want to be part of another argument. One with Arceus is enough. But he didn't believe that. Not really. He just didn't want to be convinced that trying to take Julian as his own was a bad idea. Maddie was over 300 years old. She had black hair cut in a severe bob to her shoulders. She had high cheekbones and creamy skin. She'd been a wise woman in her village before she was turned. He'd heard rumors that Roan had pretended to be summoned by one of her spells. After she had failed to cure a local girl's illness, she had sought out immortal beings who walk the earth, and Roan had appeared by her fire. She'd cast this spell because she wanted to offer her soul in exchange for the ability to heal even the most grievously sick. Roan had promised her that she'd have the time to learn treatments that she couldn't even contemplate if she abandoned her mortal life. And he hadn't lied. Medicine had become a true science, rather than an art relying on leeches and bloodletting over the centuries. Diseases that had once killed easily could now be cured just as easily. She smiled at Balthazar and rose from where she'd been sitting on the edge of his bed. Julian was stretched out on it, looking small and rather pale against the mound of pillows. Christian was staring daggers at him as Balthazar approached them. Balthazar guessed that Christian was just feeling extra protective of his best friend and tried not to take it personally. Tried and failed, but he tried nonetheless.
This will set you up right, Julian.
Maddie patted Julian's arm.
Just drink and you'll feel much better.
Julian nodded tiredly, though he showed little enthusiasm to drink up the red liquid in the sterile plastic. Maddie left Julian's side and went towards the door. He stopped her just as she reached the threshold. "How is Elena?" he asked her.
She'll recover.
Maddie's expression was sad.
Physically, that is. But losing a fledgling isn't something that can ever truly be forgotten.
"Is there anything I can do for her?" Balthazar searched Maddie's face. He would do whatever it took to bring Elena back to full health. He'd put feelers out for Timothy's whereabouts, but had found no trace of the vampire. He had a grim idea why that was. Timothy must have betrayed him. Perhaps he'd been working for the Order all along. Perhaps the Order had offered to let him back into Everdark if he played traitor. There were too many maybes. He thrust thoughts of Timothy out of his head. It was no good thinking of him now. She smiled again, that simple, sweet smile.
Just be there for her, Balthazar. Having a new fledgling in the house will both help her refocus and hurt a little too, but it will help more than it will hurt.
He nodded. He had a new fledgling, while Elena had lost hers. He would have to be sensitive to that. "Thank you for all your help." She inclined her head.
Of course. I'll go sit with her.
She drifted out of the room, closing the door behind her. He stared at that closed door for some time, feeling as nervous as a fledgling himself. Slowly, he turned towards the two new vampires in the room. Julian was looking at him with faint interest, while Christian's gaze was as sharp as broken glass.
What are you really here for?
Christian snapped. To feed you both. The words popped out easily.
We each get a bag of blood?
Julian made a face, but he reached for one of the bags. No, not exactly. Balthazar handed both bags to Julian and stopped him when he tried to hand one to Christian. I will be feeding Christian directly. Those are both for you, if you want them. Christian bristled.
If it's possible to drink blood from a bag rather than from you, I'll choose the bag.
Balthazar kept his tone even, reasonable, as he answered, We discussed this, Christian. That is not an option. But if it was not clear before, let me make it so now. Drinking from your master will ensure that you continue to thrive, especially in the beginning years.
Years?
A bleak expression flitted across Christian's face. Balthazar smiled ruefully. Still trying to get rid of me, I see. But yes, years. Christian didn't answer that, but instead asked,
But what about Julian? He's not able to feed from his master. What happens to him? Will he get sick or something?
Many things can happen, Balthazar said carefully. His powers may manifest wildly. He may experience depressions that he cannot escape from. He certainly won't be as strong as he should be. He may even go into a frenzy and kill people. And in some cases, in some rare cases, the fledglings take their own lives. Both young men stared at him in horror.
That's not good.
Julian looked down at the bags of blood in his hands. No, it isn't. Balthazar sank down on the edge of the bed where Maddie had vacated. He'd come to a decision. It was far better than Arceus's complete condemnation, or his intention to make Julian feed from him no matter what. He would give Julian a choice. You can drink blood from those bags and roll the dice as to what happens to you. Or there is another choice, one that would perhaps save you from the fate I've described.
What is that?
Christian demanded on behalf of his best friend. This was the moment of truth. This was his chance to pull Julian into the fold. Balthazar drew in a centering breath. I could feed you, just like I feed Christian. I could be your master instead of Damon. What do you say? Join us next time for episode 14, Choices.
Many people have asked us if there are ebooks of the Everdark series. Yes, now there are ebooks, as well as Everdark merch. Ebooks are available in PDF, EPUB, and Mobi from our own merch shop. Just follow the link in the notes to the Everdark series to read on your phone or any device. And check out the t-shirts, mugs, art prints, and pop sockets while you're at it. Your support really matters to us as small creators, and any purchases go directly to supporting the creation of more stories, just like Everdark and Dragon's Reign. Thanks, you guys.
The Everdark podcast by X Aratare is performed by Edward Fox, Adam Riley, Jay Thelis, Bruno Devant, Kelly Michaels, and Hannah Hart. Edited by Matthew Prince, continuity by Adrielle Wiggins. Everdark is produced by Wraith Rain Publishing in association with Her Grace Reed Studios. Copyright 2022 by Wraith Rain Publishing.
Hey guys, this is Wraith, author of the gay vampire romance Everdark that you are about to listen to, performed by a multi-actor cast. The podcast would not be possible without Her Grace Reed Studio, which provides the excellent voice talent, and of course, the support of the Wraith Rain members who are subscribers to my site, wraithrain.com, which you will learn about down below and in the podcast. I hope you enjoy how the talented actors bring these vampires and their world of darkness, mystery, and eternal love to life. Now let's get down to it.
Last time on Everdark, Balthazar offered to become master to Julian and feed both him and Christian due to King Damon being a no-show. Christian doesn't trust that Balthazar's motives are altogether altruistic, and he intends to find out the truth. Everdark, Episode 14. Choices.
Can I see you outside, Balthazar?
Christian asked. He pointed towards the door to the hallway. He wanted to talk to the vampire lord in private before this conversation with Julia went any farther. Balthazar was incredibly smart, and things were going way too quickly for either him or Julian to think clearly, with a man like him pulling their strings. Julian looked so pale and wan that Christian's protective instincts were on high alert. The vampire lord froze, as if it was clearly an unexpected request. Christian, though, had made his voice sound as if he wanted to simply talk to the man and wasn't angry with him or perturbed in any way. He already knew that this would cause Balthazar to be agreeable, even though he seemed quite enraptured with Julian and hardly looked like he wanted to leave his best friend's bedside.
Does he realize that most people feel that way about Julian? He'll have to get in line.
A small smile graced Balthazar's rather plush lips. He did have a good mouth. An excellent mouth, really. If Christian had met him under other circumstances, he might have taken him to bed. Well, he would have if Balthazar had not spoken too much before then and annoyed him. The vampire lord rose up from the bed gracefully. Everything the man did was graceful, an athletic grace, strong and sure and agile. Christian watched with a sort of fascination as he could see the vampire lord's leg muscles flex and release beneath his tailored slacks. Balthazar was a clothes horse, as he had discovered himself from the closet, but he did wear those clothes well. "Of course, Christian. I'll wait outside," the vampire lord said with half a bow. Balthazar then touched Julian's leg gently, which had Christian baring his fangs, and said to his best friend, "Do not worry, Julian. You are safe here. You are home."
Thanks.
Julian answered uncertainly. Christian forced his face back into a mild expression as the vampire lord turned and went out the door. Christian waited until the door shut behind him before he turned back to his best friend. He drew a blanket over Julian's body up to his chin. His best friend gave him a quirked grin.
Thanks, Mom.
Julian quipped.
Just rest, okay? I'll be right back.
Christian said. Julian grabbed his arm as he was turning.
Hold on. What are you up to? What are you going to talk to him about that you don't want me to hear? It's not that I don't want you to hear. It's...
Christian glanced towards the shut door. Speaking of hearing, he was pretty sure that Balthazar could hear them. His own hearing kept popping in and out, giving him the startling ability at times to hear everything within the house. It allowed him, for example, to hear the tap of feet upstairs, Maddie's voice as she murmured to Elena, and the creaks of the house simply settling. It was fascinating. Everything about this new existence would have to be explored to the fullest.
And I must have Julian by my side to do it.
He focused back on his best friend and covered the hand that held onto his arm.
I need to make sure that this is the right thing. Drinking from him, I mean. I know he's lying in some way, or at least shading the truth somewhat. We're not hearing the whole story from him. There's too much we don't know.
Julian nodded and gave one of those heartbreaking grins.
Does it matter? What? Of course it matters.
Christian looked at his best friend repressively. This wasn't like Julian to be so trusting. Balthazar was a vampire, and Julian had hated them all until a few hours ago. Now his best friend was willing to just join Lord Ravencroft without full data?
Christian, we're not going to know everything we need to know before we have to make a decision. We're going to have to go with our guts on this one,
Julian explained. Christian pinched the top of his nose.
This may be the most important decision we make in our lives, Julian, which could be, well, eternal. It could impact so many things that we have no idea about. I know.
Julian looked impossibly weary for a moment, and he shut his eyes. Christian watched him and thought he might have gone to sleep, but then Julian's eyelids opened.
The only thing I care about is that we're together. As do I.
Christian's hand curled into fists for a moment.
But Balthazar has convinced me that we cannot just go off on our own. Not yet. And that was before he explained about what might happen to you not feeding from a master. And you too.
Julian licked his dry lips. Christian bobbed his head in assent. He wasn't sure how he felt about drinking from Balthazar yet. It seemed quite the intimate act, and he was having a great deal of trouble trusting the man already.
It's far easier to tally what we do know than what we don't,
Julian said, and Christian knew from the tone he was taking that he was going to lay out facts to him to persuade him of what to do. He wasn't wrong.
Balthazar turned you, saving you from death. That's definitely one point in his favor in terms of us both choosing to be with him. He didn't do it for altruistic reasons. He seems to be taking an inordinate amount of pleasure in the fact that he did turn me.
Christian glanced over at the closed door again and pictured Balthazar pressing his ear to the door, eager to hear what Christian was saying about him. It made him unwilling to say many good things. Julian listed off the next point.
2, he came and saved me.
That was very true. Balthazar had not hesitated to put himself and his people in danger to get Julian.
I saw what he did to those other vampires.
Julian pointed out.
That was something.
That had been rather incredible. Christian had almost felt the mental command Balthazar had used to stop the entire room from moving. He had wanted to see how Balthazar, Arceus, and Ridley had erased the minds of the vampires to see if he might sense something there too about how it was done. But he had not wanted to leave Julian alone in the car with Sophia Strange. She certainly fit her name, and so he'd remained with them both. She'd given him a small smile and said,
Don't worry, Christian. You'll learn it all and more.
It had been as if she could read his mind, or see the future. She'd gone back to humming to herself and jiggling one of her feet. He'd been rather glad to escape from the car.
And,
Julian said, interrupting his thoughts,
if he could do that to a whole room of vampires, that means he could definitely have done it to you. Be doing it to you. But you're still you, Christian.
Christian snapped back to attention. He thought of Julian's words. It was true. Balthazar had not used any powers against him. From what he understood from the overheard conversation between Balthazar and Arceus, there was supposed to be some kind of link between them as well, since he was Balthazar's fledgling, that would make him even more susceptible to doing what Balthazar commanded. But he felt no compulsion to do as the man said whatsoever. Balthazar, evidently, had chosen not to inflict his will upon him.
Fair enough. That's true.
Christian admitted.
And he wants to keep us together,
Julian said as his final point.
which, to me, is pretty damned awesome. I wouldn't go that far. I think he has fantasies of, well, do you know how some men are about twins? I think he has a thing for us.
Christian remarked dryly.
Rather like some of those fans who do write that smut about us.
Julian let out a bark of laughter.
Really? He dreams of us both on our knees, pleasuring him or something? Didn't you notice how his eyes lit up when he talked about us both feeding from him? I'm pretty damn sure he's been fantasizing about us for some time.
Christian crossed his arms over his chest. Julian's eyes sparkled.
Are you sure you would mind that? He's just your type. No, he's not. I can't believe you're even saying that. Our situation, Julian, is serious.
Christian reminded. Julian smiled wanly at him.
I didn't think I was going to see you again, let alone be talking about who we're going to be spending eternity with, so everything else seems a little unimportant. Not that it is, but just, I'm taking it seriously, I swear.
Christian immediately softened.
I'm sorry. I know that you're taking this seriously, but a little levity is likely warranted, considering that we're vampires, which is utterly fascinating. Yeah, I bet you're psyched to start performing experiments and stuff. I am.
A flicker of pain crossed Julian's face, and Christian's heart thumped wildly.
What is it, Julian? Oh, my stomach. It feels like it's eating itself,
Julian admitted. He grabbed one of the bags of blood and made a moe of disgust.
Why don't these look yummy?
Christian grabbed the other and squished the liquid inside. He, too, was unimpressed with the liquid, though his stomach rumbled.
Perhaps once we open them, the smell will make them more appetizing.
Julian scowled down at the plastic bag. He sniffed it, which had Christian snorting.
Julian, they'll just smell like sterile packaging until you open them, even with our heightened senses,
Christian said with a wry smile.
Yeah, that's about it.
Julian's expression grew rather impish.
Balthazar smells a bit better.
Christian's eyebrows lifted as he said a little stiffly.
I suppose he does.
Julian became serious.
I'm just not sure if I can imagine biting him, you know? I mean, like sinking our teeth into his skin, drinking. His blood, hot and salty, on our tongues.
Christian found his heart pounding again as he imagined just that. He could almost taste the vampire lord's skin on his tongue. Balthazar smelled of high-end cologne with notes of cinnamon and cloves. His flesh would be soft with a little spring as his fangs pierced it. There would be a hot gush of blood that would tingle as it went down his throat. Christian swallowed. It was disturbing how easy these things sprang to his mind.
I control my body. My body does not control me. Christian?
Julian tilted his head so that he could look into Christian's eyes.
My eyes are silver now. Not like they were. Vampire eyes. What?
Christian stammered out.
You want to drink blood from Balthazar, don't you?
Julian grinned.
What? No. I mean, I don't know. Anything is more appealing than this bag.
He dipped his head towards the abandoned bags.
I'm glad you like him, Christian. That's good.
Julian said with disturbing enthusiasm.
I thought he was our enemy. I'm so glad I was wrong. You think I like Balthazar?
Christian stared hard at Julian. His best friend gave him a raised eyebrow.
I mean, what am I walking into here? I think I hear General Akbar yelling something about it being a trap. You do not know Balthazar well. Other than knowing the man can literally stop a room with his mind? No, I don't know him.
Julian grinned.
He is quite emotive.
Julian snickered.
Oh no, he feels things.
Christian narrowed his eyes.
No, that would be foolish to be annoyed about that. We all feel things. It's that he talks about what he feels that's the problem. At length, volubly. And he shows his emotions too, I bet.
Julian's lips were suspiciously twitching.
You know how I feel about emotive people? You are the only one I allow in my life. Emotive types are much too messy.
Christian said.
You know that. Uh-huh. Yeah, I do.
Julian was still smiling.
You're humoring me.
More narrowed eyes.
No. Well, yeah. I don't know. Things are so crazy, aren't they? I should be glad that you're being sensible.
Julian sagged back against the pillows.
We must learn everything we can. Even if Balthazar is all right, we must be sure.
Christian held on to his logic, his senses, even as he knew that they were at sea.
I've got to see if he's the right one for us to stay with. I mean, what about this Damon? What's he like? You don't remember? No, you wouldn't. You'd passed out when he burst out of the tomb and took down the two other vampires.
Julian's eyes went distant.
He's different. Strong, but weak isn't the right word. Sensitive? Fragile? No. But maybe skittish. He's had bad experiences with fledglings dying on him, so he doesn't want to get attached, I think. Are you wondering if he would be a better person to align ourselves with than Balthazar? I am. If it is as easy to change masters, and I cannot believe they make us call them that, as Balthazar claims, then we should consider which vampire master is best for both of us. You said Damon sent you to save me, but he couldn't come with you?
Christian asked carefully. Had Damon abandoned his friend? Julian nodded and opened his mouth, but then closed it, only to open it again.
I don't know if he wants me, Christian, let alone both of us. He still thinks I'm not going to survive the turning. And if you would drink from him, you might not make it either.
What if you actually had to drink blood from a human being to survive? In fiction, things can be made as scary or sexy as the storyteller wants, but would you be able to stomach it in real life? This is the question I asked the cast of Everdark in this week's mini Q&A, so I hope you listen to the mix of comedic, thoughtful, and disgusted reactions from the actors.
Alarm raced through Christian.
What are you talking about? You're fine.
Or had the look of pain been more than hunger? No, he would not think that.
All his other fledglings died. His blood is too powerful or something.
Julian had his hands in his lap. He stared down at them.
And he chose them carefully to be his fledglings. But me? He did it because I guilted him into it. I'm not sorry I did it, but I don't think we have a choice between Balthazar and Damon. Balthazar might be it.
Did it hurt Julian that this Damon might not want him? It was absurd to even consider that would be the case. Anyone would want Julian. This Damon must be a fool. Julian turned those keen, purple, such a compelling color, eyes onto him.
Balthazar likes you. I mean, he's got that look.
Christian shifted uncomfortably.
Yes, well, I'm surprised at how good you're being with the idea of joining anyone else's home. I don't think we can do this all by ourselves. Not yet, anyways. So it's good that Balthazar wants to help us.
Julian admitted with a shrug.
Later, we can figure out how we can go on together. Immortality is a really long time. He wants to help himself to us. And speaking of Balthazar, I should get out there before he gets too interested in what we're saying, and if he hasn't been listening already, he'll start.
Christian headed towards the door.
Christian?
Julian called. When he turned around, his best friend said,
Just smile at him and see what happens.
Christian shook his head.
You're incorrigible.
He pushed open the door, stepped out, and shut it behind him. Balthazar was halfway down the hall, leaning against the wall, his hands crossed at the wrists behind him. He looked like he was keeping the building up and was content to remain that way until the end of time. Lord Ravenscroft turned his head and feigned surprise at Christian's appearance, even though Christian was certain he was ultra-aware of Christian at all times.
He's a predator. A beautiful predator.
Balthazar pushed off the wall and in that graceful way turned towards him. Is Julian all right?
He's starving.
Christian wanted to bite back the words as soon as he said them, but they were out, and they were true. Balthazar looked grave. Has he drunk the blood in the bags? They were now 2 feet away from one another. Christian could feel his closeness like they were two magnets that wanted to come together. He had to hold himself firmly to not go nearer. He gritted his teeth. There definitely was something to this master-fledgling connection between them. He had to get a handle on it before it had a handle on him.
No, it doesn't appear appetizing to either of us. But we haven't opened the bags yet. I imagine that may change.
We? Balthazar's eyebrows rose up into his hairline. There is no we, Christian. You drink from me, no matter what. Remember. Christian pressed his lips together. He did not like his choices being limited by anyone's whims, but he knew that Balthazar wasn't solely acting on his own desires. He could tell the Vampire Lord was telling the truth about that much. So he said instead,
I need to know what you intend towards Julian.
Intend? Balthazar's eyebrows waggled as an amused smile crossed his lips. When Christian did not look amused, he became serious. I intend to offer you both a home, a safe place, to teach you, to make things as they should be. Christian's forehead furrowed.
Should be?
You should have been turned together. One bloodline, one house, one master. Balthazar lifted a hand and tucked a stray lock of hair behind Christian's ear. Christian didn't move away in time to avoid the touch, and somehow after it happened, he didn't mind it so much. Then something about what Balthazar said struck him. It sounded like something that the Vampire Lord had been planning.
Did you think about this?
Christian gestured towards himself and then towards Balthazar.
About me and you, and turning Julian and me into vampires?
Balthazar's silver eyes gleamed. How could I not? Those words might have made some people feel treasured, but it only raised a waspish anger in Christian. This time when Balthazar reached up to touch him, Christian caught his wrist. His voice was rough, low, and dangerous.
Did you kill Julian's parents?
Those silver eyes widened. What? No. No.
Do you know who did it? Was it vampires?
Christian peppered the Vampire Lord with questions. He read in Balthazar's expression that he did know, and that it was vampires.
Tell me!
Christian, there is no good to come of those questions. The answers will not bring the Harrows back. Balthazar crossed his arms over his chest. It drew the soft blue cashmere sweater tight over his chest. The V-neck at the top showed a beautiful snippet of bare chest. For a moment, completely against his will, Christian imagined putting his fangs there and letting them pierce the soft skin. His stomach burned with hunger, but he shook it away. He had never let his base instincts rule him before. He certainly wouldn't allow them to now.
Of course there is. Julian can finally know what happened to his parents, and why.
Christian felt his own eyes flash with anger. Would knowing be enough? The person who did this cannot be touched. They are beyond all of our reach. Balthazar's lips writhed back from teeth for a moment, and Christian knew he hated whoever this was. Believe me when I tell you that it would only cause you consternation.
Who is this person?
Christian demanded. The same one that would have murdered Julian and every single vampire in the blood den tonight, he answered. Christian thought of the confessors who appeared to be some kind of religious figures in the vampire world. One of them had mentioned a preceptor.
Does it have something to do with those religious people?
Yes, it does. They are utterly dangerous, Christian. They can do anything without fear of reprisal, Balthazar explained. Killing a couple of mortals wouldn't even have caused a raised eyebrow among our community. Even famous and beloved people like the Harrows. Not even the slaughter of the Siren blood den would have aroused any anger outside of the Sirens themselves, and they wouldn't have dared raise their voices about it outside of their houses.
So you kill everyone who finds out vampires exist? I mean, that has to be the reason for all this,
Christian said. But Balthazar shook his head. We only kill those we must. The Harrows could have been made to forget. You saw what I alone could do to a room full of vampires. Mortals are far easier to control. No, the reason the Harrows were killed and why they want Julian dead is because of Damon. Christian's brow furrowed.
But isn't he your king or whatever?
Balthazar nodded. Damon. Good grief. Even hearing that name is impossible. He shook himself and continued. Damon is, at least, claiming to be an immortal, one of the 11 beings who came to Earth and made the vampires in the first place. He was considered the first among equals, stronger than any of them, but unable to make his own fledglings as his blood was poisonous. He went to sleep to await a day when someone could survive it.
Julian, you mean?
Balthazar gave a wry smile. Julian's survival tells me that this vampire, whoever he is, likely isn't the great King Damon of old, though it appears that certain people think so.
The people who killed the Harrows and want Julian dead? The Order and the Preceptor guy?
Christian guessed. Yes. You see, our whole religion is based on the fact that we killed all the immortals, he explained. They were unjust. They used us as pawns in battles for millennia, or so the tale goes. Who knows if it is true? But in the end, we finally broke free by breaking them. Damon supposedly slept through the whole thing, though the Order claims he was the person who gave us the strength to fight.
I still don't understand why Damon could be why they want us dead. You just said that Damon allegedly gave the vampires the strength to fight against the unjust immortals.
Christian pointed out. The Order does not want Damon to return. Balthazar gave him a rueful look, because they know very well that he didn't give us power to do anything. The immortals were his friends. They were his loyal court, at least some of them. So he wakes up now to find that we killed them all? What do you think he's going to do?
He's going to be pissed,
Christian realized. More than that, I would imagine. Knowing the type that considers themselves royal, he won't be happy merely taking his revenge either. I imagine he thinks he still rules us all. Though we have a vampire council with members coming from all the bloodlines, in the end, the Order is really the ruling power.
So they don't want him back because he'll try to kill them and would likely try to take over from them?
Christian filled in the rest. Balthazar nodded. His very existence would destroy our way of life, if he's the real thing, if he doesn't get killed first.
So Julian is in danger because he's Damon's fledgling?
Christian was starting to see how complicated their new existences were. Absolutely. Other than in my house, he would have been turned over to the Order immediately, as an exiled house. I have no loyalty to them, or any other vampires.
What does being an exiled house mean?
Christian studied him carefully. It means that we have no standing in the vampire world. We have no seat on the council. We are not allowed in Everdark. We are alone. Balthazar sliced a hand through the air. His silver eyes met Christian's. And there's one thing you might want to consider in whether you encourage Julian to drink from me rather than from bags.
What?
You're an exile too, Christian. That can't be changed. This Damon won't want anything to do with us. He won't want Julian to have anything to do with us, Balthazar emphasized. He won't care about keeping you two together. He'll take Julian and part you both, likely forever. Christian went very still. He hadn't known any of this. The thought of losing Julian had him clenching his hands. A faint smile appeared on Balthazar's lips that was not mirthful in the least. So if you want to ensure that you and Julian will be together, I am the only option. Join us next time for episode 15, Whoever Shall Drink of My Blood.
Many people have asked us if there are ebooks of the Everdark series. Yes, now there are ebooks, as well as Everdark merch. Ebooks are available in PDF, EPUB, and Mobi from our own merch shop. Just follow the link in the note to the Everdark series to read on your phone or any device. And check out the t-shirts, mugs, art prints, and pop sockets while you're at it. Your support really matters to us as small creators, and any purchases go directly to supporting the creation of more stories, just like Everdark and Dragon's Reign. Thanks, you guys.
The Everdark podcast by Ex Aratare is performed by Edward Fox, Adam Riley, Jay Thillis, Bruno Devant, Kelly Michaels, and Hannah Hart. Edited by Matthew Prince, continuity by Adrielle Wiggins. Everdark is produced by Wraith Rain Publishing in association with Her Grace Reed Studios. Copyright 2022 by Wraith Rain Publishing.
Before we go on to this last chapter of Volume 1 of Everdark, I want to recognize everyone who has made this production possible, starting with the superb voice talent of Her Grace Reed Studio. After working together with the cast for many episodes, I don't only know them as actors, but also as fascinating people and friends. It has been a fantastic experience to have them bring the characters and the world of Everdark to life with their abilities. And this is only the beginning. I look forward to sharing this chapter and many more with you.
Last time on Everdark, Balthazar made a compelling case that he should become Julian's master instead of Damon. But will Damon allow that? Everdark, Episode 15, Whoever Shall Drink of My Blood. Julian picked up one of the bags of blood and turned it this way and that, watching as the red liquid oozed around inside. His stomach clenched again, and there was this terrible burning sensation in the pit of it. In response, he jerked forward, curling in on himself.
So am I hungry or dying?
In the silence after his thought, he listened. He listened for Damon and heard nothing.
Are you there? Are you just cutting me off, or are we separated because I'm too drained to reach you? I'm not dead, Damon. I need you to answer me. I need to know what to do.
His stomach finally released, and he was able to sink back against the pillows. He had to eat something, and the bagged blood would have to do. Though he had acted casually about it with Christian, he didn't want to make his best friend any tenser than he already was. His heart lurched at the thought of drinking from anyone else but Damon. He ground his teeth at that. There was nothing between him and Damon. He was pretty sure that the Vampire King had cut off the connection between them, assuming he'd died. So he owed the man nothing. He could feed from whom he liked. Balthazar actually wanted him. It would make things easier for him and Christian to make their new lives together if they were with one master.
Christian's right. That word sucks.
He examined the blood bag. There were 2 spigots at the top of the bag. He assumed that was how the blood was put into the bag in the first place. He opened one up and sniffed experimentally. His nose wrinkled. He could smell the coppery scent of blood, but also the antiseptic scent of the bag. His stomach clenched again, not as badly as before, but still painfully enough to make up his mind. Though the blood didn't smell terribly appetizing, he didn't care. Having something in his stomach would help. He lifted the bag to his mouth and fastened his lips on the spigot.
Bottoms up.
He drank down a large swallow of blood. He felt the cool liquid sliding down his throat. There was none of the pleasure he'd had from drinking from Damon that one time. There were no shared visions of the person that this blood had come from. There was no heartbeat. There was no one to gently touch his hair. He brought the bag down almost immediately, for as soon as the blood hit his stomach, he began to retch. It was wrong. All wrong. The blood felt dead to him. He hunched over and gagged. Bright red spattered the bedsheets like a bad tie-dye job. Some small part of him was darkly amused that the blood didn't look real at all. If he'd seen this scene in a horror movie, he would have told Christian that it looked fake. Almost immediately, the door to the bedroom was thrown open, and Balthazar and Christian piled into the room. Humiliation surged through him. Julian tried to apologize for messing up the bed, but Balthazar waved him off. "Let's get you some water, Julian. Christian, please remove those dirty bedclothes from him while I get the water. Just throw the bloody things out into the hallway. They'll be picked up and taken care of later," Balthazar said with a brusqueness that implied throwing up blood everywhere was no big deal.
But what if it is? What if I'm dying again? Why can't I drink blood?
And as panic raced through him on spider legs, he called for the Vampire King without thought.
Damon, are you there? I need you to talk to me.
Silence. Julian squeezed his eyes tightly shut. If Damon was ignoring him, he could go fuck himself. Julian didn't care about him then. He could do this on his own. Except the pit that opened in his stomach told a different story. But Julian forced himself to remain calm and open his eyes. His fists were clenched on top of his knees as he tried to steady his roiling stomach. He was still so hungry, but he felt so sick. Christian quickly stripped the bed, while Balthazar came out of the bathroom with a wet towel in one hand and a glass of water in the other. Lord Ravenscroft sat on the edge of the bed. He efficiently wiped the blood from Julian's face and urged him to take a drink of water and spit it up in said towel. He expressed no distaste for holding a towel full of Julian's spit up.
Thank you.
Julian got out. His voice sounded phlegmy, and he hacked up more thick blood into the towel. Julian was amazed and grateful how unfazed the vampire lord was. Maybe Balthazar was so used to blood that it didn't sicken him to see bedclothes splashed with crimson. But vomited blood was different from fresh blood. Julian gulped down the water and let Balthazar clean him up. The vampire lord was rubbing his back gently. "It's all right, Julian. Just breathe," Balthazar murmured. Christian, who had taken the bedclothes out into the hall, returned. His face was white with worry.
What happened? Why couldn't he keep the blood down?
"It's not unusual, and it's nothing to be worried about. I know it looks very dramatic, but it isn't. Young vampires have a hard time digesting bagged blood. As I've explained, they usually nurse from their masters for quite some time." Balthazar twisted around and extended the soiled towel to Christian. "Could you take this and get me a clean one? That's a good lad." Christian didn't hesitate any more than Balthazar had. Julian cringed at the mess he'd made, and the fact that others were cleaning it and him up. He struggled to sit up.
I should help,
Julian said. "No, you need to keep still." Balthazar easily pushed him gently back down onto the pillows. Julian's eyes flickered to where Christian had disappeared into the bathroom. Then he quickly looked back at Balthazar. He grasped the vampire's biceps and held them, clutched them really. He cast his voice low.
I need you to be honest with me. 100%.
He squeezed Balthazar's arms.
Is this really normal?
Balthazar's eyebrows had risen from the desperation in his grip, but at these words his confusion seemed to clear. "It is. Why?"
Damon said that every fledgling he'd ever had has died. I need to know if this is a sign of that.
Julian insisted. A flash of anger crossed Balthazar's handsome face. "He told you that you wouldn't survive, but he turned you anyways?"
It was the only way. I gave him my blood so he could get out of the tomb and save Christian from those other vampires. He was too weak otherwise.
Julian quickly explained.
But then I needed strength to get Christian out of the Everdark, so he gave me his.
"And you took his blood believing this?" Balthazar's expression was strangely blank.
Yes, of course. I had to save Christian. There's no life for me without him.
Julian said. You are extraordinarily brave and selfless to do such a thing, Balthazar finally said. He looked so fondly at Julian that it almost made Julian uncomfortable.
I don't think it was. Bravery is something you do when you have something on the line. Like I said, without Christian, I wouldn't want to go on anyways.
Julian muttered and looked away from the vampire lord. After another long moment, Balthazar replied, In the stories, supposedly, King Damon could not make fledglings, but I don't think this vampire who turned you is him. Julian frowned. He looked up.
Why not?
Because people, even vampires, or perhaps especially vampires, need a history. We need our kings and queens and gods. We need these things to give order and meaning, Balthazar explained, his gaze going distant. We often need them because they excuse the bad things we do. Believe me, many masters have used tales of him to do many things.
Damon is real, and he's not bad,
Julian added. He didn't know why he was defending the vampire king. He'd abandoned Julian, hadn't he? Again.
He did the best he could for me. I knew the risks, and I accepted them. I don't need someone to hold my hand in life.
A smile bloomed on Balthazar's face. No, you don't. I've seen your videos, and you are brave and strong and forging your own path. That's why, among other reasons, I want you in my house. You're not dying, Julian. Well, you already did. This stuff with the blood...
What are his options?
Christian asked as he emerged at that moment, not only with dry and wet clean towels, but some different clothes, drawstring pants and a Henley in a deep blue, for him to change into. His best friend placed the clothes at the bottom of the bed and handed the towels to Balthazar. The fact that he was trusting Balthazar to do this told Julian that somewhere, perhaps deep down, Christian believed that Balthazar was acting in their best interests. All right, Balthazar said, businesslike, as he went to clean Julian's chin. Julian took the towel from him.
I feel like a baby who was spit up with you doing that. Just tell me if I get it all.
Balthazar surrendered the wet towel and held the dry one for him. Here are the options that I see. Bagged blood.
Yeah, I'm not doing that again.
Julian's stomach threatened mutiny just thinking about it. He wiped his face harder to get his mind off of it. The towel rasped against his beard. It was strange to think that though he was dead, his hair was still growing. Then that's out, Balthazar agreed.
Couldn't he be hooked up to an IV? Elena is.
Christian pointed out. Do you want your best friend to have to be hooked up to an IV the rest of his existence? Balthazar didn't even pause for that answer. No, you must learn to feed.
Well, what about feeding from a live human? I assume you must have people around for this,
Julian said. You are correct. It would be a pain to hunt constantly. We would do nothing else. But while that will become an option for you later on, it's not now. You'll have the same reaction to the bagged blood, maybe worse, Balthazar said.
Can I feed him?
Christian asked. His left hand reached and rubbed his right wrist as if imagining Julian drinking from him. Julian swallowed. He would be safe with Christian. But that should not be their role to each other. He didn't want to be dependent on his best friend to eat. That would put untold strain on them both, even if Christian would never turn him away.
Especially since Christian won't.
Before Balthazar could object, Julian said,
Thank you so much, Christian, but no, I don't want you to bear that burden. Julian, I know you would give of yourself willingly, but no, thank you, but no.
Julian told him as gently as he could. Christian just nodded and said nothing. Julian turned to Balthazar.
So it's Damon's blood or yours. Those are really the only options I have, aren't they?
Balthazar tipped his head without saying anything. They were back to the same spot they'd been before all of this had happened. Balthazar had cut to the chase the first time they'd spoken. Julian hadn't really been accepting of that completely when the vampire lord had said it, but he knew now that this was truly his only choice.
Damon, where are you? Do you give a damn?
Something in Julian shriveled when there was no response. Balthazar took the wet towel from him and handed him the dry one. Julian hadn't realized he'd stopped moving. Quickly, he dried his face.
How long can Julian go without blood?
Christian's expression was strained. He knew that Julian was having trouble with his choice, even though it should have been a no-brainer. Balthazar was here and clearly wanted him. Choice made, except his heart lurched at the thought. He hasn't eaten yet on his own since he was turned, and he needs to within the next few hours or he risks going feral, Balthazar explained. Julian could hear the capitalization of the word feral. Even without an explanation for what it was exactly, he could guess. He would go mad with hunger and become a truly base animal. He would attack people. He could not allow that to happen. This wasn't just about him and his feelings. It was about safety and sanity. Not only would he be putting other people at risk, he could only imagine the horror that Christian would go through if he were to become feral. It was simply not an option. Christian stood at the bottom of the bed, studying Julian intently while his hands worried a small piece of string, likely from the sheets.
Balthazar, maybe you can leave Julian and me to discuss. No.
Julian cut him off.
There's really nothing to discuss. I haven't heard from Damon, and I don't have the strength to go to Nightvallen myself and beg him to help me. I don't even know if he would if I asked.
That hurt immeasurably to say, but it was true. Balthazar coughed slightly. I had a member of the house go to the library entrance. It appears locked. Julian felt his heart ice over.
Then it's settled.
Balthazar lowered his eyes, giving Julian privacy, even though he didn't move away physically. Julian was grateful for it.
It's okay.
Julian said more to himself than to them.
Damon helped me when I needed it. He owes me nothing more.
He owes you. Balthazar shook his head. So much more than you know. But I understand that we should leave it. You've made your choice.
There are many people who work full-time behind the scenes to produce Everdark. A quality production requires a full staff that includes both the talent and the production crew. Without the production team, the show would definitely not go on nearly as well. With a production manager, a voice editor, a podcast editor, a proofer, an illustrator, a graphic designer, tech support, and a channel manager. And I'm out of breath just reading all of that. Everdark is able to be a smooth, polished experience. Without them, there would be no artwork, thumbnails, music, or the editing that makes for effortless listening. So let's say a word of thanks to the crew behind the scenes. I certainly am. Thank you so much, guys.
A choice? Damon made it for me.
Julian took in a deep breath and turned his gaze fully to Balthazar.
Have you ever done this before?
Fed another master's fledglings? Yes. There was a mirthless smile that crossed his face. There's something you must know. My master was a bastard. He starved us, beat us, made us his slaves, and I killed him for it. Balthazar's gaze went distant, and Julian could read in it that there was much more horror in those bleak statements than he could ever imagine. I pledged that I would never be like him. Christian had gone very still at the end of the bed. He was regarding Balthazar with a slightly stunned expression. This information had changed his view as to the vampire lord, at least slightly. Julian hesitantly put a hand over one of Balthazar's.
I'm so sorry.
That mirthless smile appeared again. What I did was necessary, but I can tell you that it was still hard. I still mourned for the master I wished I'd had. Julian blinked as his eyes suddenly burned. Maybe he wasn't the only one who wished for something different. Damon hadn't hurt him like Balthazar had been by his master. The vampire lord looked steadily into Julian's eyes. He put his hand lightly over Julian's as he said, "So I know a little of what you're feeling. I know that choosing me is not easy, but I promise that I will give the two of you the best existence I can." He twisted around to look at Christian, whose head was lowered. His best friend seemed fascinated by the string in his hand. "I know this wasn't really your choice. Becoming vampires, everything."
But it is done,
Christian said, though he did not lift his head.
We must get used to it.
I want far more for you than that. I want you to be happy, Balthazar insisted, and Julian could hear the truth in his voice. He turned back to Julian. There were young vampires in the house who came with me into exile. I fed them. They are fine. Christian is the first person I have turned fully. He gave a genuine soft smile then, and Julian saw a shy pride in it almost. His hands squeezed Julian's. But all in my house are under my care. Julian swallowed. So much had happened in the last 24 hours. He felt hollowed out by it and more uncertain of his own life's course than he'd ever been. But Balthazar was offering him a port in this storm. He would take it.
So, how do we do this?
Julian forced his voice to sound light.
In the vampire movies I've seen, they go right for the throat after saying they don't drink wine. But I sense that might not be the right way to go here.
Balthazar chuckled indulgently and looked up at Julian through his lashes. He was truly good-looking, one of those people whom were effortlessly sensual. Julian's heart beat harder as he thought of being so close to this vampire. You could feed from me that way, but it might be too intimate yet. He made the last into a question, even as his silver eyes sparkled with knowledge that it would. Yet he still hoped that Julian would be brave enough to do it. Julian found himself blushing hotly and looked away.
Maybe we'll save the throat biting for another day.
Indeed. Balthazar looked towards Christian. I think I would like to feed you both at the same time. Julian and Christian's gazes met. Julian remembered Christian's suppositions about Balthazar wanting twins, or in this case, best friends as a fantasy. He let out a choked laugh which had Balthazar looking at him oddly.
It's nothing.
Julian lied, and bit his inner cheek to stop any more nervous laughter from spilling out.
Why do you want to feed us both together?
Christian crossed his arms over his chest.
Do you think he'll admit to wanting a threesome? Oh, Christian, Balthazar is a seducer. He won't say that outright.
Because I think you will find that you will want to feed as soon as Julian starts. It's easier if we plan for that in the beginning. Balthazar shrugged. And I thought it would make you both more comfortable to be doing this, well, together. Christian regarded Lord Ravenscroft for long moments without blinking, but then he nodded brusquely and sat down on the bed on the other side of Balthazar from Julian.
I take it we'll be drinking from your wrists, as the throat is out of the question?
You are correct. Balthazar pushed up the sleeves of his soft cashmere sweater to reveal slender, elegant wrists. He offered one to Christian. His best friend took it and held Balthazar's hand lightly. It was fascinating to see how Balthazar's pupils swelled when Christian touched him.
He is really into Christian. It's not a new thing, I don't think. He was watching us. How long has he been a Christian fanboy, I wonder?
Feeling better, knowing that even vampires could crush on his best friend, Julian took the other proffered wrist. Balthazar's skin was warm, and his hand was well formed. Julian remembered when he had drunk from Damon's wrist. His stomach trembled, but this time in anticipation. This blood would taste different from Damon's, but thankfully nothing like what was in the bag. It would be satisfying. When he saw Christian bring Balthazar's wrist to his plush mouth, Julian did the same. Balthazar's fingers curled along their jaws, encouraging them. He smelled of cinnamon and clove, sweet and spicy. Julian realized he would smell more of Balthazar's cologne if he was placing his lips on the vampire lord's throat. His fangs were suddenly extended, and he was shaking slightly. Julian found his eyes going unfocused, and that he was imagining Damon's noble profile instead of Balthazar's.
If I just don't think about it, maybe it'll seem like I'm drinking from Damon.
He shook himself internally. That wasn't fair to Balthazar. This man was feeding and sheltering him and Christian. He needed to acknowledge that.
We won't hurt you by doing this, will we? There are tendons and veins and such here.
Christian frowned as he thought of what could go wrong. You just have to sink your fangs in gently. The blood will flow and you will drink it down. There is no need to gnaw. Balthazar grinned.
All right.
Christian's eyes met his.
Ready, Julian? Want to count to 3?
Julian joked. Christian, though, took it seriously.
1,
2. Balthazar whispered. his eyelids hooded clearly with the thought of the upcoming pleasure.
3. Oh my God!
Julian's voice rose up in a shout of utter shock. What? Julian, Christian, get out of here! Balthazar roared as he saw what Julian had. The wall opposite the bed had become glass. It was no longer plaster, paint, wood and steel. It was glass, clear as spun sugar, and beyond it wasn't dirt, but a city of pale stone. Nightvarlen. There was a stone street under the two moons, and running down it straight towards them were hundreds of white wolves the size of cattle, white wolves with red glowing eyes. The glass would not hold against this onslaught. They would be through it in seconds. Balthazar half lifted Julian and Christian from the bed, trying to get them out of the way of danger, but not even vampire speed was enough. The glass shattered, and the wolves streamed in like a raging flood. They were on top of the three of them in seconds. Julian heard Balthazar snarling. Wolves went flying as the vampire lord fought against them valiantly, but vainly. As if pushed along by the current, Balthazar was suddenly up against the wall by the door, wolves at his throat, while Julian and Christian were still stunned on the bed. Then the wolves melded into one figure, a figure dressed in stark black and white, tall and commanding. It was Damon, the vampire king, in his leather pants, boots, and silk shirt with a fur coat, the same color as the wolf's fur draped from his shoulders. He was holding Balthazar by the neck with one hand. The vampire lord's heels beat against the wall. Damon held him 2 feet off the floor with ease. The vampire lord was spitting and hissing. Julian saw the fear in his eyes, though, even as he valiantly fought against the unstoppable force that was Damon. Julian knew what was going to come next. He'd seen Damon do it twice already. Julian was up off the bed and flinging himself at Damon. He gripped the arm that held Balthazar.
No!
Julian shouted.
Don't hurt him! Balthazar is not an enemy! Damon, stop!
Damon's voice, in his mind somehow blessedly again, said, He tried to take you from me. He will answer for this betrayal.
Damon, he's not a traitor to you. If anyone is a traitor, it's me.
Julian cried. Those red eyes, like blood-red jewels, flickered over to him for a moment. Never. You would not betray me.
I was starving, and I thought...
Julian's throat tightened to the point he almost couldn't speak.
I thought you didn't want me. I thought you abandoned me when I couldn't hear you any longer.
Those red eyes grew wide. They were wild, and Julian could tell that Damon was on the knife's edge of losing control. No, I never left you. You could not hear me. I was too damned weak to reconnect to you fully when you went into Siren territory. I could hear you, but you could not hear me. Balthazar took that unfortunate moment to try and lunge forward and dislodge the hand that held him. That was a mistake, as Damon easily held on to him like he was an unruly kitten.
Don't fight, Balthazar. He'll kill you as easy as breathing.
Julian cautioned him. Tell the child behind me to put down the lamp. Otherwise I will have to punish him for attempting to hit his king, Damon said. Julian realized that Christian had crept over to the nightstand and grabbed one of the heavy lamps. He had been about to bash Damon over the head with it. Julian shook his head rapidly at his best friend.
Christian, he knows what you're doing. It won't work anyways. Just put the lamp down, and everything will be okay,
Julian said. Christian let out a growl, but he lowered the lamp, though did not put it down. I will still be killing this one for daring to touch what is mine. Damon shook Balthazar rather like Julian could have done to a small dog.
No, you will not.
Julian emphasized each word, which had Damon's eyebrows rising. The vampire king was clearly not used to being told what he could and could not do. Julian was sure this was just the first time there would be a battle of wills between them.
Balthazar saved Christian, and he saved me. When you couldn't be there, he was.
Damon's red gaze slid to Balthazar, who looked a bit purple and was gasping. Did saving you include trying to steal you from me?
Like I said, that was my choice when we lost our connection.
Julian firmed his shoulders.
And I might add that you never thought I was going to survive your blood. You retreated from me before. So why do you care now?
You are mine, Damon growled.
You're going to have to do better than that. I'm my own.
Julian insisted. But seeing that this was not the time to discuss Damon's evident possessive nature, he continued,
But regardless, we all thought you wanted nothing to do with me. And he didn't pressure me. He just gave me options, and I chose.
Damon's nostrils flared, and his eyes narrowed. Would you choose him now, over me? Julian did not hesitate as he answered,
Of course not. I mean, I'm so gratefully offered, but you are the one. Well, anyways, I would choose you. I do choose you.
I see. Damon sounded slightly mollified. We will be discussing this further, Julian. The Vampire King released his hold, and Balthazar slid to the ground, clutching at his throat and coughing. Christian went to his side immediately and examined his throat. It's nothing, Balthazar croaked out, which clearly showed it very much was something. I'm fine, Christian. At that moment, the door to Balthazar's bedroom crashed open, and Arceus burst into the room. He was wielding an axe in one hand. His face was red with rage. Behind him was a much smaller figure. It was Sophia Strange. Damon regarded the axe-wielding berserker and the little teenager with the same level of concern, which meant none. Arceus, don't! Balthazar gasped, extending one hand towards his friend. But he needn't have worried. For the moment that Arceus saw Damon, he stopped. The axe dropped from his suddenly limp hands. He didn't blink, and then his legs seemed to go out from under him, and he was on his knees before Damon.
My king,
Arceus said tremulously. Damon inclined his head as if that was his due. Julian was tempted to hit him, but didn't. Things were a little calmer. He wanted them to stay that way. Sophia Strange picked her way into the room, hands behind her back, doing a sort of skipping walk. She curtsied low to Damon and said,
My king, it is so good to finally have you awaken with us.
Before Damon could respond, she said to Julian,
You better catch him, dear one. Breaking through the earth from the Everdark has taken more out of him than he realizes. He wasn't really ready to come here. He's gonna feel it right now.
At her final word, Damon was suddenly collapsing towards the ground.
Damon!
Julian cried. He had a second to grab Damon and ease the Vampire King to the floor. Arceus was immediately at Damon's other side, supporting him as well.
Why did you come to Earth when you weren't ready?
Julian found himself asking in a high, aggrieved voice as he stared into the suddenly bloodless face of the Vampire King. Worry writhed through him. One of Damon's hands, trembling and pale, reached up and brushed Julian's cheek, a bare brush of fingertips. For you. I came for you. And then Damon's head fell forward as unconsciousness dragged the Vampire King into darkness. Join us next time for episode 16, Awkward Moments.
You may think I've mentioned the entire cast and crew of Everdark, but that isn't the case. There are actually thousands of people who have helped to create this production. Those thousands are our paying supporters, Wraith Rain members past and present, Amazon customers who have bought my books and audiobooks over the years, Wraith Rain shop customers who have bought books, audiobooks, manga, and merch, and the YouTube channel supporters who have memberships or give us super chats and stickers during streams. If you've ever given us money, you have given us the ultimate resource, the thing that anyone needs to create and publish anything. Without this money, we could have all the good ideas in the world, but we wouldn't be able to make any of them real. So thank you for your past and present support. You are the ones who have helped us create more and more works of gay, romantic, action-adventure stories in various forms. See you next time for Chapter 16.
The Everdark Podcast by X Aratare is performed by Edward Fox, Adam Riley, Jay Thellis, Bruno Devant, Kelly Michaels, and Hannah Hart, and Liz Gentle as Seer. Edited by Matthew Prince. Continuity by Adrielle Wiggins. Everdark is produced by Wraith Rain Publishing in association with Her Grace Reads Studios. Copyright 2022 by Wraith Rain Publishing.
Welcome to Chapter 16. Before we continue, I need to answer this important audience question. What is the difference between the episodes on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, and the episodes on the members' private podcast and the chapters in the audiobooks? The member podcast and the audiobook chapters have just the chapter content. No intro, no middle break, no outro. It gets right into the action with Edward saying, "Last time on Everdark." The public podcast, which is what you're hearing now, usually has the same material but broken up with this intro and the info break in the middle and my outro, where I usually tell you how you can support us or like and subscribe, that sort of thing. But some chapters have an even bigger difference, such as chapter 17 coming up next. These chapters have had parts taken out of them. Sometimes it's just a paragraph or two, but sometimes it has to be whole scenes, or even, quite frankly, most of the chapter altogether. We'll tell you more about why we had to do this during the info break in the middle. For now, on with the show.
Last time on Everdark, sensing that Julian was about to feed from another vampire, Julian doing so out of desperation and the belief that Damon had abandoned him, Damon dramatically traveled from the Everdark to our world in the form of wolves. Now Balthazar has yet another guest, this one unwanted to deal with, and a bit of a broken heart. Everdark, Episode 16, Awkward Moments. You know, the next time I'm in trouble, I won't be calling you Arceus, Balthazar said waspishly to the hulking berserker. In Christian's eyes, Arceus looked more like a cuddly bear at the moment, all sheepish and downcast eyes. Clearly, the confessor was embarrassed slightly by falling to his knees in shock at seeing Damon. Thinking of the hundreds of wolves breaking through the glass barrier, Christian had to admit that Damon was impressive. And other things. Sheepish yet calm, Arceus answered,
You didn't call for me. I just came. And you were fine. He'd stopped choking you by the time I'd come in.
My neck is bruised, and my throat is sore. Balthazar pointed to his throat. Personally, Christian didn't see anything. It had been turning red and purple when Damon had just released Balthazar from his death grip, but now it was perfectly fine. He found it mildly amusing that this very tough vampire lord was acting like a drama queen. "Listen to my voice," Balthazar cried. "It's raspy from ill use by that
King?"
Arceus supplied helpfully. Balthazar, though, was having none of it. "That bastard is responsible." The confessor shook his head and clucked softly.
Careful, Balthazar. He might hear you and pin you to the wall again.
He was made of wolves. Not just one wolf. Hundreds. He breached my bedroom like some kind of...
King,
Arceus offered again, even as he smiled indulgently at Balthazar. The confessor hadn't seemed a dour fellow before Damon arrived, but there was almost this giddy happiness to him now. Balthazar gave him a black look. In return, Arceus said,
Your bedroom wall is now quite repaired. No sign of the gateway to the Everdark at all.
A gateway would have been useful, but no, it's just a wall again. Balthazar's hands rose up and down rather like the wings of a bird as it flapped on a line. And who can do that exactly? Just create a new gateway between the two universes. Who? Don't say it. I know what you're going to say. A king?
Not a king, Balthazar. The king. Our king.
The confessor corrected mildly. And he's taken over my bedroom. Kicked me out of my own space and...
Where else should our king stay but in the best bedroom in the house?
Again, Arceus was mild as milk. While Julian and Arceus had carried an unconscious Damon to Balthazar's magnificent bed, Sophia had rushed out to bring in Maddie the healer. Sophia had then surprisingly disappeared, even as Maddie froze in shock at seeing Damon. But then the healer came back to herself and burst into action. She immediately attached an IV line to Damon's arm and brought in 6 bags of blood to be dripped into his system.
I've never worked on an immortal before,
Maddie said nervously. Her gaze swept over the vampire king who lay magnificently in all his black leather and white fur on the middle of Balthazar's bed looking like a king.
but I believe he will be fine with blood and rest.
He was too weak to leave Everdark. He came here for me. Idiot.
Julian breathed the last. His best friend was sitting on the bed, holding one of the vampire king's hands in his. He was looking at Damon's peaceful face while biting his lower lip. The eyelids were closed, hiding those blood-red irises.
He didn't want Balthazar to feed you,
Christian said as he moved towards his best friend. Balthazar was with Arceus by the door. The vampire lord was still fingering his throat and staring at Damon with a mixture of shock and resentment.
Yeah, that was the long and short of it. Guess he does want me as his fledgling. Or at least he doesn't want anyone else to have me. He's beautiful,
Christian said quietly. He needed to know what his best friend felt towards this alien being. Though Damon looked like a human, or rather a vampire, those eyes showed he wasn't. But there were other things about him, setting aside utterly the fact that he could become hundreds of wolves, that made Christian keenly aware that Damon was not like everyone else. He worried a little as he saw some of that difference in Julian, though he could not put his finger on what it was.
He is,
Julian answered. A pause, then.
And stubborn, and high-handed, and possessive, and you're worried about him.
Christian interrupted gently. Julian turned anguished eyes upon Christian.
If I hadn't agreed to feed from Balthazar, he wouldn't have done this. He may have put himself at risk by coming here this soon, Christian. You didn't know, Julian.
Christian laid a hand on Julian's arm comfortingly.
He wasn't communicating. He was. I just couldn't hear him. He was frantic.
Julian shook his head.
If he's damaged because of this...
I truly think he will be all right.
Maddie said. She'd been quietly replacing an empty bag of blood with a fresh one.
But nobody really knows, do they? He's one of a kind.
Julian murmured. Christian thought about the white-hot hatred that had fueled his best friend for a decade against vampires. He shouldn't have been surprised that Julian would find it in his heart to care for one of them. It was easy to hate a group until one met individuals within that group that didn't match one's low expectations. He didn't show half as much concern for you when he sent you back to Earth on your own. Balthazar growled. His arms were crossed over his chest and he was glaring daggers at Damon. Arceus grasped his shoulder, his voice low.
Balthazar, please, let this go. Julian was never yours to begin with. You must accept this.
Balthazar shrugged off his hand and stormed out of the room with more muttered curses. The confessor took a deep breath.
Christian, Balthazar needs you right now.
Arceus gestured for Christian to go with him after the vampire lord. Christian was about to argue that Julian needed him more. Balthazar was acting out of pique, in his opinion, while Julian was really hurting. But his best friend cut off that argument.
I'll be fine, Christian,
Julian told him.
Go on. Balthazar's been pretty banged up tonight. He was trying to do the right thing, and no one is thanking him for it.
Still, Christian hesitated a moment. He wasn't keen to leave his best friend all alone with this strange vampire that didn't speak out loud, but only thought his mind to Julian alone. The conversation, while he'd pinned Balthazar to the wall, had been one-sided. They'd only been able to hear Julian's responses, none of what Damon said. And then there were those red eyes. They glowed like hellfire. When Christian had met the vampire king's gaze for a moment, he'd seen something. A glimpse of eternity.
If you're sure, I can come back immediately,
Christian said.
I'm good. I'm just gonna sit with him for a while. Need to know he's okay.
Julian answered. He'd reluctantly nodded and followed after Arceus. They had found Balthazar on the first floor, in a beautiful and airy living room. A fire crackled in the grate of a fireplace that bisected the large, arched room. The myriad of reds and golds and whites in the flames fascinated Christian with his enhanced vampiric sight. There were large, inviting sofas in white, dark blankets thrown over their backs that bracketed the area before the fireplace. Christian could already imagine curling down to read some historical treatise in order to prepare for one of his and Julian's shows.
If we're allowed to do that any longer.
He glanced over at Balthazar. The vampire lord was still going on about his grievances. Despite what Arceus had said, it didn't seem like Balthazar needed him at all. He was surprised that he was slightly miffed by it. "He's not a guest. He barged in just when I was Julian and Christian." The vampire lord seemed unable to complete that sentence, though. He strode angrily over to the roaring fireplace, resting one hand against the marble mantelpiece while staring into the flames.
It's good he came when he did.
Christian spoke for the first time since they'd left Balthazar's bedroom.
I don't imagine he would have given Julian time to convince him not to kill you otherwise.
I was doing what was best. Balthazar had been insisting on this since the whole strangling thing. Arceus and Christian's gazes met for a moment, and Christian felt he might have met a kindred spirit. The confessor clearly believed that Balthazar, for all his good and true reasons, wasn't being 100% honest with himself. He'd wanted Julian and Christian for himself. Any other reasoning he gave for why Julian needed to drink from him, while it might have been correct, was not the deep-root reason for his desire.
I dread to think of what he would have done if you had fed Julian. The whole house might have been forfeit.
Arceus pointed out. He would have to be black-hearted and unworthy of our fealty if he did that. Balthazar looked coldly furious. Christian already knew that the vampire lord had a large problem with authority figures.
Considering what his master was doing to him and the others, that was a good trait to have. But against Damon? Yeah, the king fainted, but once he's truly himself again, I fear what he'll be able to do.
He is our king. He has certain expectations of us. Trying to take his fledgling probably rises to the level of traitor in his mind.
Arceus explained incredibly calmly. He'd said as much half a dozen times already.
He spared you when he could have killed you without a thought.
Julian's the only reason you're alive.
Christian pointed out. I know. He's a dear boy, a very dear boy. That makes sense, as he is your best friend. But Julian is starving, Balthazar muttered. It's not like Damon can feed him yet.
He tried to drink the bagged blood before. Maybe he'll try again. I'm actually pretty sure he will, considering how worried he is about Damon,
Christian said. Balthazar merely nodded. Christian could see he was still disappointed at not having best friends in his house. Christian was trying not to think about what this meant for him and Julian. He knew that Julian would not allow them to be parted. Neither would he. Balthazar and Damon would have to learn to get along.
Or we'll dump both of them and go our own way.
His stomach twinged. He was starving, and as if Balthazar felt it too, the vampire lord swung around to face him. His brows bunched together and his mouth flattened as he took in Christian. You are hungry, and here I am, your master, being incredibly thoughtless. Balthazar approached him and touched his biceps with both hands, holding him lightly. Christian tensed, but forced himself to relax. He knew, though, that Balthazar had noticed, and there was the faintest lines of disappointment on his forehead.
It's not you,
Christian blurted out, then gritted his teeth. He owed this man no real explanation for his reaction. Was it normal to be fine with strangers touching you? Shouldn't it be especially okay for good-looking ones like Balthazar to do it? Even more, especially ones who had saved you and your best friends' lives? So Christian added,
I just am not good with people touching me that I don't know very well. But you seem like a toucher.
Balthazar cocked his head to the side and gave Christian a fond smile. He squeezed his arms once and released them. I am, but I don't want to breach your boundaries.
You already have,
Christian admitted. But then when he saw the crestfallen look on Balthazar's face, he quickly added,
But it's fine. I mean, it will be fine. Once I get to know you. Considering we are bound together forever.
Will you take it slow? Balthazar offered as he brightened. This was the first time he'd looked happy since Damon had arrived.
Okay. Maybe you can start by telling me about yourself.
Christian knew nothing of the vampire lord. Balthazar brightened. Excellent, because I love talking about myself.
Hey guys, let's talk about why some of the episodes of the public podcast of Everdark have had content removed. It's because Everdark is a gay romance story, and certain chapters have sensual scenes in them like most romances. These sensual scenes are not allowed on most third-party platforms, especially YouTube and iTunes. So that everyone can enjoy the story, we've had to fade to black during some parts. We just aren't willing to risk having episodes deleted like they have been in the past, or our account deactivated by pushing the boundaries with them. YouTube and iTunes and Spotify will always win these sorts of fights against individual creators. These giant companies don't care about fairness. And they don't care about discrimination. Not in the way you think. They may publicly say a lot of things, but privately they act stuff all the time. Those arguments that we would make about keeping this stuff up wouldn't even get past their tech support bots. They just give us the axe, say, you violated the TOS, and move on, leaving us screaming into the void and leaving this podcast either deleted entirely or unfinished for the public because we lost the ability to upload. So that's why we've had to cut the sensual romantic scenes from the public podcast. You'll know when a public podcast episode is edited. It'll be in the title, and the narration will literally fade out to a special message. But all is not lost, because we're not dependent on YouTube, iTunes, or Spotify like so many other content creators are. We have still produced the full, unedited, fully sensual episodes of Everdark, and they are available, just not in the public podcast. I'll tell you how you can get them at the end of this chapter.
Arceus smiled.
At least he's honest.
Balthazar scowled at the confessor, but it quickly became a lopsided grin. I am honest about that,
Why do you not take him to the guest house?
Arceus offered.
You need to feed to recover from your grievous wounds before you then feed Christian. And I'm sure that Christian would benefit in understanding how this part of the house works.
I'm sure that Damon will need some humans to volunteer to feed him once he wakes, Balthazar said, his mouth flattening despite his obvious intention to play a good host.
He is our king, Balthazar,
Arceus said quietly.
I will have another room prepared for you for right now, until he can be moved.
Thank you, old friend. I do appreciate all you do, even when you fall down on the job. Arceus just shook his head.
You'll never let me live that down, will you?
Never, Balthazar replied cheerily. Arceus grunted in amusement. Christian found himself grinning. He liked the way they were together. It seemed almost human. Also, let me know when His Highness awakens, Balthazar requested.
I know you're not keen on Damon, but I believe you should rethink that.
Christian said. And why is that? One of Balthazar's eyebrows lifted. Don't tell me that you're a royal worshipper too.
God, no.
Christian almost violently shook his head.
I can't think of a stupider way of governing than by bloodline.
See, Arceus? Christian has a good head on his shoulders. He is logical and scientific in his thinking. Balthazar crowed at the confessor.
But since that is your way of government...
Christian broke in, which had Arceus grinning back at the vampire lord.
You should realize the benefits of an alliance. Right now, he doesn't know anything of what the modern vampire world is like. You can be a bridge for him. And I'm betting that if Damon allies with House Ravenscroft, then you won't be considered exiles for much longer.
Christian. You're a member of House Ravenscroft too, Balthazar reminded him. But you're assuming that after he wakes, that he won't seek out better allies.
Well, he might seek out additional allies, but he won't abandon us.
Christian said with certainty.
Because of Julian?
Arceus guessed.
I don't know if you two realized it, but Damon listened to Julian and did what Julian asked when Damon spared your life, Balthazar. He didn't just stop on his own. He did what Julian requested of him.
Christian reminded them.
Julian won't want to be parted from me. And since, as you said, I am a part of House Ravenscroft,
He'll stick with us too. Balthazar tapped his chin and looked thoughtful.
Exactly. I know you thought that Damon would simply take Julian away, but just a few minutes with those two tells me that Julian has far more power than Damon in that relationship.
Christian couldn't help grinning at the thought. He wasn't surprised by this fact. Julian often played White Knight and protector to his partners. Not that there had been really any serious ones. Julian had simply always been the one in charge. While Damon might be a king and used to commanding all the vampires, Julian would never simply follow his directions unless he agreed with them. His best friend was fiercely independent. Arceus squeezed his large hands together.
Then everything we do to keep Damon safe and comfortable will enhance that friendship between our house and our king.
Balthazar grunted. Maybe so. I admit it was a surprise to see Julian stepping between him and me. The boy had no fear.
Julian is brave. Utterly brave, down to his bones.
Christian assured them. Balthazar let a large, devilish grin cross his features. Then we need to see to the king's comfort. Come, Christian, let me show you the guest house. Balthazar took Christian down a parquet-floored hallway. It was broad and gracious with a high ceiling. There were oil portraits on the walls. Some were still lifes of fruit or flowers. Others were landscapes of waving wheat fields or ponds with a profusion of flowers peeking up from the water's surface. There were portraits, expertly done, of people long dead who stared out at Christian through intelligent eyes. He wondered if any of them were Balthazar's ancestors or perhaps family to others in his house. Speaking of others, he'd met only Ridley, Arceus, and Maddie of House Ravenscroft. Elena had just been a still figure on a bed. But now, as they passed by gracious rooms, he saw other vampires inside. There was a young man, really no more than a boy, with hair so pale it was almost white. He was laughing and talking amiably to a man that looked to be in his 60s, grizzled and dried out like a piece of old leather left in the sun too long. Both of them were sipping something red out of highball glasses. Christian's nose searched out the coppery smell of blood, and he knew what it was. They stopped talking and turned their heads to look at him and Balthazar pass. They stared at him with open curiosity. The boy lifted his glass to Christian. Christian nodded his head, but then quickly looked away. Balthazar gently bumped his shoulder. You are an object of fascination and deep curiosity. We haven't made many fledglings since being exiled. And of course, they know who you are.
Who I am?
Christian blinked in confusion. Your show? They've watched your show. Christian hadn't considered that real vampires would be watching them. He wondered now how many of the views they got were from the Lords of the Night. It was a disturbing thought.
Did they know you wanted to turn Julian and me?
He asked. I never publicized it, but I imagine some knew, Balthazar admitted with a shrug.
You say that so casually. But you're talking about the end of Julian and my lives.
Christian crossed his arms over his chest. End of your first lives. But trust me, though it does not seem it yet, your second life is much better. Christian cast a glance at the vampire lord and saw that he actually meant what he said.
Well, I admit that it is rather fascinating.
Just then they passed another salon. Inside was a single, tall, slender woman with black hair piled atop her patrician head. She wore a black dress and a simple choker of pearls around her swan-like throat. She, too, stared openly at him out of those strange silver eyes, but then inclined her head graciously when Balthazar greeted her.
Who is she?
Christian asked once they had passed by the door. That is Isabel. She once owned a great salon in Paris. She was dying of consumption when Oscar offered her the gift of eternal life, Balthazar murmured.
How old is she then? And is Oscar here too?
Christian asked. She's 263 years old. And yes, Oscar is still with us. Just as an FYI, You never ask how old a vampire is, Balthazar cautioned him.
Why not? I understand why humans have an issue with age, but vampires? You don't grow any older, so how can it be an issue of vanity?
Christian frowned at what he thought some odd carryover from human life. You've actually got it reversed. For a vampire, the older you are, the better you are, Balthazar explained. As we age, we get stronger. Our powers increase. Thinking back on Balthazar's power to control a whole room of vampires and the fact that he was head of his own house, Christian guessed he must be very old.
How old are you?
The vampire lord gave him a narrow-eyed look, before breaking into laughter. Did I not just tell you that asking for a vampire's age is a no-no?
Yeah, but you're very powerful, and the boss here, so you have to be ancient.
Christian guessed. Balthazar looked unutterably pleased. You would think so. But no, I'm an early bloomer. Christian's brow furrowed.
Why is that?
Balthazar shrugged. No one knows. There are rumors out there that I'm Eiros reborn. I think that's nonsense, but I do encourage them as they keep other vampires wary of me and my people.
Who is Eiros?
Christian asked. Balthazar opened his mouth in surprise, but then nodded as he realized that Christian knew little to nothing. Eiros is the immortal who founded our bloodline. He was similar to Damon, but could create fledglings, obviously. And in case you're wondering, he too is dead. Obviously, if I am him reborn, can't be in two places at once. Our unique gift is that of mind control.
Mind control. Fascinating.
Christian said, and meant it.
When will I be able to use that gift?
It will develop with time. I would assume you will get the basic ability to lure humans to you, for instance, after you've fed from me a few times, Balthazar told him. Balthazar proceeded to tell him about the 11 bloodlines, the houses, and the relationship of Everdark to Earth in global terms. They had reached a pair of French doors that led outside by the time he'd explained that it was believed that time simply stopped in Everdark. It was never light there. The moons didn't move. No watches or clocks ever worked, and electronics were faulty at the best of times. But there was technology in the Everdark that was so far beyond what they had on Earth that they simply considered it magic. Christian was pleased that Balthazar didn't try to tell him it was real magic, just technology that, though they could use it, they didn't really understand fully, though some of the oldest vampires had made some breakthroughs.
Do you have any? Can I see some? Study it?
Christian had asked. We do not bring it here. And unfortunately, as an exiled house, we have no access to the Everdark any longer, Balthazar explained.
Well, we will now, with Damon.
Christian said, more thinking out loud than meaning to say it. You are very certain Damon will be so generous with us. Balthazar's eyebrows were practically up in his hairline.
You don't know how persuasive Julian can be. And stubborn. Very stubborn.
Christian shrugged. Balthazar grinned. Well, I'm happy to have him working on our behalf, then. Christian was tempted to say that this was perhaps better than if Julian had joined House Ravenscroft himself. But that would have poked at a still fresh wound for Balthazar, and he wasn't sure how he felt about it himself. He didn't want anything to separate him and Julian. He was certain that neither of them would allow this to, but it just made more obstacles for them. Balthazar led him down a few steps to a grey stone path that meandered through flower beds to a large house in its own right about 100 feet away. The large blooms bobbed in the night air. Their scent was intoxicating. Christian forgot to ask more questions as he bent down to sniff one of the large flowers. He stared at it in the darkness. His vision was incredibly keen. He could see even its pollen, but the color was not the same as it would have been under bright sunlight. Christian felt a stab of pain. Christian, what is it? One of Balthazar's hands was on his shoulders. It was a light touch, barely there, not meant to upset him, but to comfort.
I just realized that I'll never see the sun again.
It was a stark statement. It held such grief in it. He'd just now realized one thing he had lost, and there was more behind it. like an avalanche of parts of his life that were now gone from him, and he hadn't realized until this moment. Balthazar drew in a breath. No, you will not. It is the price we pay for the other things we gain by becoming lords of the night. One of those avalanche pieces unfolded before him. His parents' faces flashed before his mind's eye.
How do I explain this to my parents?
He asked. His parents were brilliant professors. They were quiet, studious people with incisive minds. They would figure out that something was wrong with him. They would, in their way, interrogate him until he broke down. He didn't lie to them. It was simply not something he did.
How do I tell them about this?
There was a pause before Balthazar spoke, low and quiet, his hand still a surprising, comforting presence on Christian's shoulder. Normally, we break from our families. Christian stiffened. That was not happening. But not always, Balthazar continued. Some families, when they learn about the existence of vampires, choose to join us as acolytes. Those are human helpers. They're our link to the day. Some of those become vampires in the end. Others live out normal lives and have normal deaths. He tried to imagine his scholarly parents as vampires and couldn't do it. He assumed that not everyone was made into vampires who wanted to be. They were chosen. Could he turn his own parents if they wanted to be chosen? His head spun with it. He clamped down on his thoughts. Thinking of his family wasn't grounding him. He would have to pass all his feelings out later.
What about the show? The business that Julian and I have? Will we still be allowed to do that?
Christian asked. Of course. You can even still, pretend to look for vampires. Balthazar let out a slightly breathy laugh. People look younger for longer now. No one will question your youthful looks for at least a decade, if not longer. We'll have to eventually arrange for you to phase out of that part of your lives.
Right. Of course, it makes sense.
Christian stood up. He dusted his hands on the fronts of his pants.
There's a lot to think about.
There is. Balthazar agreed. But you have time, Christian. It'll all work out. The vampire lord then reached out and brushed his fingertips across the tip of Christian's nose. Christian frowned.
I thought we were going to take the touching thing slow,
he said. Balthazar smirked. You had pollen on your nose. But I won't save you from silliness again.
No, thanks. Pollen removal is allowable at any time.
Christian scrubbed his nose with his right hand. The truth was that he was missing Balthazar's hand on his shoulder and was cursing himself for it. Good to know. They resumed walking again to the guest house. There were lights on in every window, though the shades were drawn, and all Christian could see were occasional silhouettes. Some of our human acolytes live on the premises for a time and offer to feed us, Balthazar explained as he gestured towards the house. We often don't allow any one of them to stay more than 3 months. Christian frowned. He was relieved that the vampires weren't killing them.
Why not?
Being fed from can become quite addictive, especially from an Iros.
Why do I have a feeling that every bloodline says that?
Balthazar flashed him a smile, his white teeth practically glowing in the moonlight. But we are actually right.
Because of the mind control thing?
I would touch your nose again as I said, bingo. But there's no pollen there any longer. And yes, you are correct. Not only is the feeding physically pleasurable, but we also implant thoughts to make it more so.
But that's...
Mind control? Yes, Christian, it's what we do. As a proud member of the Iros bloodline, you will learn to do it too. Balthazar flashed him another unapologetic grin. It doesn't hurt them, just makes things better.
Do you tell them you're doing it?
Sometimes. Most no. Balthazar shrugged.
I don't know how I feel about that. It's one thing if the person consents to it, but another if they don't.
Christian hunched his shoulders. I assure you that every person wishes to be here of their own free will, Balthazar told him. They were at the front door now. It was painted a deep brick red and had a highly polished brass knocker and handle. Balthazar didn't use the handle. Instead, he simply opened the door and pushed it inwards, gesturing for Christian to precede him. Christian stepped inside to a large foyer. Flowers, likely from the garden, filled delicate Oriental-style vases and gave the room a sweet scent. The walls were painted a deep royal blue. The floor was marble with an inset design of a compass. There were more oil paintings here with dark frames showing nautical scenes. The light came from a chandelier that was set on low and large pillar candles on various tables. It gave the place a pleasant, mellow appeal. Christian actually found himself relaxing. That was until he saw a woman dressed in flowing white pants and a white wrap shirt coming towards them out of a hallway that stretched deeper into the house. She had honey-blonde hair that hung loose on her shoulders, a mouth that was slightly too wide to make her classically pretty, a smattering of freckles over a pert nose and two bright green eyes. Even if he hadn't seen the green eyes, Christian would have known she was human and not a vampire. Every vampire, including himself, he imagined now, moved in a certain graceful, almost liquid-boned way that humans simply couldn't replicate. Her face was slightly familiar to him. It didn't click that he knew her until she spoke.
"Welcome, masters,"
she intoned. Her voice was smooth and low, but then she saw Christian, and she gaped for half a moment before sputtering out,
"Christian? Christian, is that you? It's me, Laura Shelty. We went to high school together, and I've watched your show with Julian like forever. What are you doing here? Are you an acolyte as well?"
But then she really looked at him, and one of her hands fluttered up to her mouth.
You're a member of House Ravenscroft? Oh my God!
She quickly dropped down to her knees, forehead brushing the floor. Christian stared at her in open-mouthed shock. In that sudden silence, Balthazar murmured, "And this is why we usually don't turn people in the same city as they were living before." Awkward moments. Seeing Laura on her knees, Christian had to agree with him. How many more of these awkward moments would there be? He was betting a lot more.
If you want the full, unedited episodes of Everdark, there are 2 ways to get them. The first way, you can actually buy the audiobooks from us. They are divided into 15-chapter volumes each. That's about 8 hours per volume, and they're available in our shop. Audiobooks are uncut chapters. When you buy them, they're just MP3s. You can download them to your devices and play them anytime you own them. The second way is to join my site, wraithrain.com, as a member. Members get a private podcast feed with the uncut chapters. They are the same tracks as what you get on the audiobook, but you can just stream them right from a private page after you log into wraithrain.com. The best part about being a member of Wraith Rain, depending on when you join, you could get access to multiple volumes. It's just $9.95 a month at the most expensive. So why not sign up for a little while, support us, and get access, not just to the podcast, but all the gay romance written stories and manga. Links to both the audiobooks and sign-up form are in the notes. Thank you guys so much for listening.
The Everdark podcast by Ex Aritare is performed by Edward Fox, Adam Riley, Jay Thellis, Bruno Devant, Kelly Michaels, and Hannah Hart, and Liz Gentle as Seer. Edited by Matthew Prince. Continuity by Adriel Wiggins. Everdark is produced by Wraith Rain Publishing in association with Her Grace Reads Studios. Copyright 2022 by Wraith Rain Publishing.